Welcome to SAM Conversation, an online program of South Asia Monitor. Today, our topic is the India-China border talks. Should they continue? For this, we have with us Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, former Director General Infantry and an experienced field commander of formations along the line of actual control. He's seen the Chinese up close with all kinds of their monkey tricks and what have you. I'm not using this word lightly. It's monkey tricks as seen over 50 years, from 1967 till date. General Kulkarni, I think we've had 20 or 21 co-commander meetings. We've had other meetings, and I'm sure on the diplomatic circuit also there must be, some or more than some interaction. But what is disturbing is that whatever the Chinese had, occupied right from Aksai Chin, that remains with them. Then in 1967, after the Nathula skirmishes, they worked very hard to make us agree with them not to fire at each other. And by doing this, and by our accepting not to fire at them, I think they've taken great advantage of this. Because their attempt to nibble, to try and, crawl, nibble, and what, I don't think that stopped. Then 50 years later came Doklam. Then, very 2 years later, came the global virus, which was leaked out from Wuhan, the very place where Mr. Modi was invited by Xi Jinping. And once that virus had become a pandemic, we saw the second Chinese aggression, if I may put it that way. Now you know what all has transpired. We lost 20 personnel, including the commanding officer of the Biharis. And then, I think in what followed, there's an official version of 43, but there are other reports which say that we may have killed even up to 100. And again, ironically, without the use of firearms. We still did not use firearms then. Anyway, I request you to throw light on whatever, because I think you having seen the pattern earlier, you're in the best position to tell us what has changed, if at all anything has changed. All yours.
Sir, thank you very much. And wishing you and your viewers very happy Baisakhi, a very happy Meghdut today, because it was on this day 40 years back that we launched Operation Meghdut.
Very, very happy Meghdut Day, very happy Baisakhi.
Yeah. But notwithstanding that, I had a nice trip both to Arunachal as also to Ladakh, and in about last 6 months. And I can now virtually be able to go because I could go as far forward as one could reach, maybe in Ladakh along the Kailash range, in Tawang along Bumla, and things of those kinds. So I have personally seen now what is it like on ground. That is 1,597 kilometers of the LAC that we have. Of course, there are challenges. There's no denying the fact. Because unfortunately, since it has not been demarcated, now, since the demarcation has not been done, and there are the perceptual problems that crop up, as a result of which there are these patrolling points, and patrolling points 65 in number, which extend from the Karakoram Pass to Chuma. So that is where the whole problem crops up. So we have problems at petrol point 9, 10, 11, 12, 12 alpha, 13 in the Depsang plain. We have 14, 15 in the Galwan region, then Hot Spring, then Gogra, things of those kinds where a lot of water has flowed. A lot of things have improved in the sense that, yes, tensions to those that large extent that existed around May 2020 have certainly come down. The level has come down, and one can say, well, the situation is stable, but definitely, as the chief says, sensitive. Sensitive. When I say sensitive, because there's good old days that even I, when I was the chief of staff, Eastern Command, when I was the chief of staff, 14 Corps, my interactions with the Chinese, very cordial, nice, in the sense that things were not as bad, and well, we could put across a point of view, and they insisted, we also insisted, they also insisted as to what they wanted. And most of the time, all these meetings that took place, whether it was at the Maldo garrison, or whether it was at Chushul, or whether it was at Bumla, all of these were primarily to see to it that cordial peace and tranquility prevail. Now, what surprises me most, sir, is that why did the Chinese do what they did? Now, very nicely, you mentioned 2017, we had just up now, what you call in the east. And then subsequently, again, we had after the Doklam, followed them after by the pandemic. And after that, immediately came what happened on May 2020 at Galwan. So why is it that ever since Xi Jinping has taken over in 2013, we continuously we find that the assertiveness, the kind of attitude which the Chinese seem to be the followers, like that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without a fight. And like you rightly said, no shot being fired anywhere. Even when we lost 20 of our men, no shot fired, but most of the deaths took place because of the cold, winter, water, freezing, everything. But similarly, they also lost far greater number. But irrespective whether they lost or not, but we definitely lost 20, and that's a cause of concern. And what really happened along when things can, and this assertiveness which comes, and like the Depsang, most of it, when we see that along the Sirijap range, along the Pengang shore, the finger 1 to 8 that we had, we would be able to go up to finger 8, they would come up to finger 4. And now, of course, neither do we go to finger 8, nor do they come to finger 4. So it's a kind of a thing which is, of course, now when we say, it doesn't really mean that we have lost territory. So that must be really understood. It's not losing territory. We can see all of it from the other side of Pangang. So it's not that we can't see. We can see everything. From finger 1 to finger 8, all of it is visible. We can dominate it by fire. We can dominate it by all kinds of means. So there is nothing like that. But yes, what was happening earlier by this kind of an action, whenever the patrols met, confronted, then like we saw in May 2020, that it will get violent. And when it gets violent, then beating up each other and things of those kind of occur. So to avoid that situation,
yeah.
It's 50 over 50 you know what exactly happened.
50 years of fisticuffs, literally yes. Over 50 years of fisticuffs.
Absolutely.
And I know, I recall from, which I brought out in my book also, China Bloodies, Bulletless Borders.
True.
That in 1967, what really surprised us was how sensitive they become to body bags. Their own body bags.
So there is no denying the fact, because not many people, like what you have said, are aware that how much we had an upper hand in 1967. Though we may be totally on the back foot in 1962, but in 1967 we had a tremendous upper hand. In 1986,
in
as Sundarong Chu,
1962, we were on the back
yeah,
foot for for other reasons, concerning
other
the
than
government. The
yeah,
Indian
other than
soldiers,
military,
uh,
yeah, very true.
it was raw courage. In
Some,
62, it was raw courage, but it
yeah,
was you know, fighting to the last man, to the last bullet. It sounds very good, but I think if it has to be done, it's disgraceful. It's, for a country to come to a stage where its army is falling short of ammunition. Anyway, we won't go into that, but 1967
yes.
was a rude shock to the PLA.
So there is no denying the fact that the Chinese are very sensitive to body bags. Firstly, after that one child norm that they have, and when we say about 80 people of the Chinese have been, that means 80 families have been badly affected in China. So that's a huge number which the Chinese are unable to withstand. So that's something. Another thing that they are on the back foot is that they are a little now, I would say, chocolate soldiers, a little more softer, not being
They,
able to operate at such great altitudes, and which we have
Jay,
a
I see,
very big advantage.
as we look back, it is an army of exercises and visuals and a lot of, parades. And this, I mean, an showing off and a projection of power, but one which has no, it's not born on the ground. It's
So
not been
there's no
tested on the
denying the
ground.
fact, for a very simple reason, that they seem to believe in preponderance of fire, preponderance of missiles, preponderance of everything, show a lot of propaganda that we are number one and that Chinese are 9 feet tall, whereas on ground they are neither of it, which they understand.
Yes,
The
yes.
their military leadership understand very well that the PLA soldier would not be able to withstand when the combat fight starts. That is very, very clear. And uh, fully aware of that kind of a situation, now after where we expected May 2020 to be able to go, restore that the conditions that existed as in May 2020, to a large extent, I would say, yes, status quo ante to some disengagement. Now, what is important is what you just said, sir, that we've had 21 rounds of the core commander talks. That is the military level talks that have occurred, 21 rounds of them. We have had 29 rounds of the WMCC. That is nothing but coordination and consultation of meetings at the
Absolutely.
diplomatic level.
Yes,
So,
yes.
despite all that, the feeling is that what exactly is transferred on the ground, and what difference do we see? Talks, I would still say,
And
much that
each round of talks, they are so lengthy. They're very good. The Chinese are very good at kadam kadam se kadam, step by
the
step,
reason
step
for
by
this
step.
So the reason for these long talks that occur is primarily because language. Firstly, it's all scripts which are written down. And once the script is written down, they abide by their script. So they'll read one line, you'll have an interpreter giving his explanation. We have our own interpreter who understands.
I know.
If he is
Then
not saying or not interpreting it properly, then we interject to say, look, what he said was this, whereas what you're interpreting is you're saying this. So sometimes there are a lot of things that keep operating. So you find that meetings do go right up to midnight sometimes, long meetings,
Yes,
and at the
and
end
go
of it, nothing.
and tell me, doesn't this amount to in so many talks, when every time it's not, the matter is not being resolved, doesn't it amount to some kind of dadagiri,
So with China, sir, China respects strength.
bullying?
That is, there is no denying fact that you have to deal with China from a position of strength. You cannot deal with them from a position of weakness. To them, they are the center of universe, and everybody else are satellites. And that is where they, until and unless today, they what is their contention? They are insisting that in not just in Asia, but in the entire world, they're looking at China being numero one, which they feel that today it may not be possible because the kind of threat economically, militarily, politically, or and also technologically, even in spheres of high tech, whether it be artificial intelligence, whether it be space, whether it be cyber, India is catching up and India is getting in there. So they find that there's only country which can actually compete with them is India. And now if India has got closer to the Western world, and if that be so, then they find that in the Indo-Pacific, where maximum trade there, which is almost equivalent of $5 trillion trade which passes through the Indo-Pacific, they feel threatened that somewhere or the other. And that feeling comes probably, I feel, having interacted with them on numerous meetings with them, is the lack of language. If the two sides can understand the language that they are talking, probably it is easier. If I'm talking to an American, and much that he does not agree with me, I would still have a sense of humor to convey it to him. He will have a sense of humor to convey it to me. At the end of it, we'll thumb the table and say, yeah, you are right to some extent, but look, let's do it this way. Yeah. It will help both of us to do it. Whereas with Chinese, it's very difficult because he with a poker face, he'll be sitting there. He will say nothing. At the end of it, he'll say, I will go back and I will come back to you. And that coming back is only the next meeting, which
Yes,
is again
yes,
of
yes,
no
yes.
consequence.
No,
That's something that we have to face with the Chinese. But even if they were to understand, even if they were to do, Chinese in their mind, it is the leadership in their mind, are being autocratic, communists, and seem to feel now no end of themselves, that they feel that India is the only country which is not letting them occupy the position that they deserve in the as center of universe. So that's a big
well,
psychological
that
setback that the Chinese have.
very, that's you put it very well. And yet, and yet there is no doubt that we, our official line is that there's not an inch of territory that they've occupied. Then
I'll put it.
At the diplomatic level, we still sort of it appears we allow ourselves to get bullied. I don't know. If, I feel there is that's my my position, my opinion may not matter at all. But having studied this matter from right from the time we were in India, at least if they are reminded, look, this is what you guys are under fire. Would you like to get with all this arming that you are doing? What is it going to
there
lead
are
to?
certain. So we have to now, unfortunately, because first and foremost, we are a democracy. A democracy has its own limitations. We cannot get autocratic in a manner that at all times we are not there to compete with China on matters military for a simple reason that there's so much of poverty, there's so much of education, so much of health, so many things got to be seen in India. Unlike there, where it doesn't matter, because what is PLA? It's an arm of the Communist Party. It is not the Chinese army. It's the arm of the Communist Party. Whereas the Indian army is the arm of the nation to ensure the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the country, irrespective of who comes to power. So that difference that exists between China and the rest of the world, Xi Jinping counts. He's the last word. He need not. He can sack his prime minister to say that, look, when I say I want this, you have to cater for this. Where you get your money from, I'm not concerned. This is what I want. So Xi Jinping has a different outlook in life, whereas there are restrictions in a democracy. So, but notwithstanding those restrictions in a democracy, we've gone a far way. So we have to manage. Because for China, USA is the enemy. So whatever they are, getting their arms, equipment, technology is with a view to be able to stand up to America, not India. Whereas for us, it is we have to stand up to China, not America. So there's a lot we have to stand up to America, which spends over $800 billion on defense, and the Chinese are spending approximately about $300 billion on defense. We are not even spending $70 billion on defense, and of which about 60% go in various other things. So the actual modernization, there is a very little proportion, not more than 15% goes into it. So there's a lot that we have to manage. But I would still grant to our country one great thing, that despite all the limitations that we have, the troops that we have, the men that we have are able to withstand such impossible, it's not easy to fight at altitudes of 20,000 feet, where it's difficult to breathe, difficult to walk, difficult to eat. And despite that, breathe, solid blizzardous weather, snowfall, all kinds of no oxygen, people find it so difficult to sleep, so difficult to eat, difficult to walk, loss of memory, everything all associated with, our men still face it with a smile. For believe you me, sir, for years
No, there is
on
no
that I
doubt.
was there.
The Indian,
Yeah, I have never seen a
Indian
Chinese
Army
soldier.
soldier, the Indian Army soldier has proved himself to be the best. I'm telling you, in the
Yeah,
First and Second World Wars, they acknowledge this. They acknowledge this.
yeah,
Even the Allies and the Axis powers also. The enemy,
absolutely.
they both
We can
acknowledge that we were the
undergo
best.
we can undergo tremendous hardship because for us, the desire, the motivation, the self-motivation, Naam, Namak, Nishan, Izzat, battalion, regiments, what have you,
Yes.
everything is, making sure that this boy is holding on. For years on, I
Anyway,
have never ever seen a
no.
Chinese helicopter. Never. I have not seen a Chinese helicopter at those heights ever. In my entire service
Yes,
of 40 years, I've never seen a Chinese helicopter, even though I've been
you
there.
said it.
And
You said it.
they'll come by vehicle. Men also would be 8 kilometers, 10 kilometers behind in very fantastic, comfortable positions. Vehicles would be centrally heated till they came up. So they are almost in a level, comfort level, which is they cannot come out of it. And therefore, it is very difficult for a Chinese soldier to match the Indian soldier. But that shouldn't make us complacent because this is our strength. With that strength must come modernization. With that strength must come be able to match up to them
No
and be
doubt.
able
No
to
doubt.
tell them to be able to tell them that don't mess around with us. If you mess around with us, you will also have bloody clothes. Don't worry, we will not leave you. So if once that deterrence, I wouldn't say deterrence from the point of view, but being able to convey,
Reminded. They need to be,
yeah,
I think, reminded. And because
they have to
otherwise,
be
uh, anyway,
very true, sir.
they need to be reminded. And otherwise, there's no end to these talks. There's no end to them. And
So talks are, I would still say, irrespective of nothing very much emerging. Let's put nothing very much emerging. I'll give you two
it's a
incidents which
line
I
of
saw, sir.
communication which is kept alive, no doubt.
Firstly,
No doubt.
the line of communication. Now, like when I see them at, the Moldo garrison, I saw them quite recently, or I saw them at Bumla, the troops that I met of the Chinese on that side. I could feel that they were quite relaxed. And the Chinese troops relaxed is an indication that there are orders coming to them from top that relax, do not aggravate the situation. Let's carry on the way it is. So that's the first indication. Otherwise, a Chinese a poker facer. He will not even talk to you. He will just stand straight, looking at you like a statue. But it's not happening. That is an indication that all these talks that are taking place, whether it is at the military level, whether it is at the WSCC or the diplomatic level, are definitely ensuring or are attempt to ensure that there is peace and tranquility along the LAC. And despite the things, not the disengagement, not in the manner that we were looking at it, but yes, the aim is to have peace and tranquility. And a soldier, you can imagine, sir, we all are soldiers. What tension the commanding officer must have been. He can't sleep because he doesn't know what will happen.
Gen Kulkarni, you come out with a lot, which um, you have a point where you say, yes, the line of communication must be lines of communication must be kept open, and it's heartening to hear from you, from your recent visits, that you see a bit of a change in the Chinese soldier, in the PLA soldier, where uh, uh, but all all we want, all we want to try for is to get the PLA, the Chinese Communist Party, to get back to pre-May 2020.
So to a large extent, what you're saying that May 2020 status quo ante, because to a large extent, maybe at Patrol Point 14, 15, 16, 17, be it at Galwan, be it at Hot Spring, be it at Gogra, a lot at Pengang, so a lot has happened. But yes, at Depsang and Demchok, where it is not, it is not actually connected with May 2020 because it is something, a legacy which is continuing since 2011, 2013. Then they came along the Reki Nala, they came in, went back. So there's been a lot that has happened in those areas. But what happens is,
one when Xi Jinping is being entertained by Mr. Modi on the in Gujarat.
So this is what happens with the Chinese. is that unpredictable behavior, very very unpredictable. In the
Yes,
sense,
yes,
the body language of Xi Jinping, you can make out from the body language that when he stands, it is with a view. When he wants something, you will find his body language is different. But when he is wanting to exert and he will not
yes,
even
yes.
move. He will just shake hands with a distance and be able to tell you, look, partner, you are inferior to me and I'm superior to you. So this Asian behavior, which is there deeply ingrained into the Chinese, of wanting to have up and down, कि मैं बड़ा हूं और आप मेरे नीचे हैं. If that is
Uh,
acceptable to you, then I am willing to talk to you. I'm equal, but otherwise I will sit on the cot and you will sit on the floor. But if I want you to sit on the cot with me, then you have to accept that I am superior than you. India cannot do all that, sir. India is also an old civilization, as much as the Chinese are. And the threat that the Chinese feel from India is that the Indians are very hardworking, they're technologically very savvy. Very soon or later, they will catch up with the Chinese. And if the Chinese, irrespective, because they're a trading nation, they are not a creative nation, they're a trading nation. And in trade with America, Europe, everybody starts imposing sanctions on them. They would not be able to, because the huge factories that have been set up to be able to cater for the entire world, those factories will go idle and they will soon face unemployment. They will soon face problems within the country. So what Xi Jinping is offered to his people is that a good life, and by 2049, a fantastic numero one. You are going to be the ruler. Every Chinese, means he's pumped the Chinese to a large extent, and to that, every Chinese has accepted the surrender of his human rights. He has accepted surrender of his own democracy. He's surrendered everything for a good life, which Xi Jinping or the the Communist Party of China is willing to offer. So there's a quid pro quo. The Chinese Communist Party is willing to offer, which they have shown. It is not that they are lying or not that they've said, they've done it in the last 35, 40 years. I have seen what Chinese were. When I went to recently to Beijing, I know what Chinese are. So this kind of a transformation that has been seen in the Chinese, whether it is in the infrastructure, whether it is in the outlook, whether it is in the dressing up, whether it is in the eating, whether it is in the hotel. No, China is now has arrived. It is as good as the United States of America. This is what a Chinese was looking at. Now, you can't find much of a difference between Taiwan, Hong Kong, and the mainland China. So all of them are virtually intermixing and looking at and talking and feeling. Therefore, if they can offer to the men or to the people of China what they want to offer, and the Chinese men population feels yes, the leadership is what they are saying is willing to offer, they are willing to surrender, absolutely surrender to the organization. If they say you will sleep at 8 o'clock in the evening, they'll all sleep at 8 o'clock in the evening. Is
yes,
it possible in India? It is not possible in
I,
India, because so that is the
I,
difference. So the much that the leadership there is willing to give, tell, and do at, and it is a quid pro quo. The leadership expects men or Chinese to surrender their rights to them for the good life that
but
they do
no,
wanting to offer.
what about us? What about us? Do
Sir,
we
for us,
do we
sir,
keep
we have.
accepting them?
So what
We know
happens with
we know we are better. Even they know we are better. They're not very happy about where we've reached in our infrastructure build up, in our whatever weaponry we've accumulated in the last couple of years. They're also aware, but the fact remains that the bullying is still on, and all we can hope for, and we must try to work towards, is to get to a level, get to
So
a
that
level
is
where
what is surprises. That is exactly what surprises Chinese is that in a democracy which they consider is as madness, how is it that India is able to develop? How is it that they're able to land on moon? How is it that they're able to feed everyone? How is it that they're able to move forward? How is it that they're able to get technology? How can they become the fifth largest economy? How come in the next 5, 7 years they become the third largest economy? So these are things which bothers them, and this is what the Chinese leadership feels, that the Chinese might start thinking in so much of freedom, of so much of democracy, maybe a little later, but they can also attain. And it is not an autocracy or communist only that are able to do it. So
and
this kind of a feeling and fear is there in the Chinese, sir.
thank you, Kulkarni. it's a
Thank you, sir.
it's thanks for a lot of things which have been brought out, and I will I only say that, well, there's another very mega election, or the mother of all elections, which we're going to see, and maybe some things which haven't happened earlier may happen now. I don't know. I just leave it at that. But as far as the armed forces are concerned, there should be no doubt that their modernization and their equipping them with whatever they need must be done with utmost possible dispatch, so that we are not found wanting, because you never know what kind of a turn global events may take for the PLA and the Indian Army to actually, that's something we should not start thinking that it's not possible. Certainly not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They dislike strong leadership, though they themselves will follow strong leadership, but they dislike strong leadership in India. They would much like chaos in India, which suits them.
Of
Whereas
course, of course, of course. That's an old story. We've had
yeah.
we've had decades of it in the past. Anyway, thank you very much, Jal
Thank you,
Kulkarni.
sir.
All the best.
Thank you, sir. Regards.